Hello and welcome to the Goal Podcast, news and commentary from Gun Owners Action League, your leading voice for the Massachusetts gun owner.
I'm Garrett, across the table from Jeff, who's celebrating a birthday coming up.
This whole week, I'm still trying to stay focused, but it's kind of like taking a knee and running out the clock.
Running it down to be this weekend. It's a decade this time. Right?
Yeah. They start to blur together, you know?
You're getting older. Well, right on. Happy birthday, man.
Thank you.
What's going on with you?
Well, so after we released last episode, I got an email from one of the folks who listen to the podcast.
Yeah.
Saying that it just finished reading 1776 by McCullough and mentioned that Washington recommended the use of what was called buck and ball to be loaded into muskets at the time. So a musket ball and bird shot loaded into the same charge.
Yeah. Thank you, Matthew, for sending that email. It was really cool. 1776 is one of the audiobooks in my regular rotation. You know, you have audiobooks or books in general that you just kind of go back to once in a while.
Oh, you do?
Well, I do. It's like, I spend an awful lot of time in the car, so every once in a while I'll just hit the play button again. And as a matter of fact, as it happens, I'm halfway through 1776 again right now. The David McCullough book. It's a really, really good book. If you haven't read it or listened to it, you ought to. Washington did encourage his men to load buck and ball in their fight against the British. Like Matt pointed out, this is a combination load. So originally the shooter would load the powder and then 3 to 6 buckshot pellets, and then finally the main, full caliber musket ball on top of all that. You load them in different orders sometimes depending on the gun and the situation. But that was kind of like the basic original idea. Was to get of course, the devastating impact of the main ball, along with a little bit of collateral damage, all in the same shot. Loading this way costs the load some energy, so it was typically pretty close range option, but it was known to do some damage, especially to the tightly packed, open field battle lines of old style combat. I was able to find evidence of buck and ball loading as late as the Civil War in some regiments. But by that time, it was kind of going out of fashion given the rise of rifle muskets and true rifles at the time. So it was starting to fall out of fashion, but, shotguns, as we knew, still had military applications, still do today. But speaking of shotguns, there's a modern reinvention of the buck and ball idea in modern shotgun loads. So you see the Winchester PDX-1 12-gauge defense load has 3 double-aught buck pellets and a 1-ounce copper-plated slug in the same shell. So what's
I've shot that before.
What's old is new again.
It's a niche cartridge for sure. It's not one that I would particularly select for a defensive purpose, but it's a cool loading.
They bill it as a defensive load, so it's short range. Pretty, from what I've seen, it's pretty tight at short ranges. But I don't know.
I've seen mixed results. It's one of those ones I would say you need to test it before you actually employ that for a defensive package.
Yeah, right on. So really cool to hear from Matthew. Thank you very much for listening and writing in. Really cool.
So on the national front, we kind of talked about it and tipped into it a little bit in previous episodes, but the so-called the Big Beautiful Bill has passed into law with the provision that reduces the federal tax burden to $0 for suppressors, SBRs, the any other weapon category as defined by the National Firearms Act. It still does not repeal the NFA. The NFA is still a thing, but it might actually put a ding in the armor a little bit. So remember, the NFA was originally structured as a tax law, not a gun ban and not a registry, in order to sidestep the obvious constitutional concerns. But now, with no taxes being collected, national groups are gearing up to maybe take this to court and take on the idea of the current registry in the NFA itself. Because why do you need this registry and this paperwork to track $0 in tax revenue?
That's right. It kind of takes the gas out of the whole NFA registry idea, right? Because that's been defended in court as tax law, and with the argument that you need the registry in order to track the taxes, but no taxes, no tracking. I guess we'll see. Stuff's going on at Mass Fish and Hunt. So the new website. I got my permits and everything all set. I went back in and checked and made sure that my doe tag is, put in and everything, because it's by the time the podcast airs, the application period will be over. It's going to end on the 16th.
Yep, the deadline to apply for the antlerless deer permits will have passed on Wednesday, July 16th. So starting August 1st, you can check to see if you've been awarded a permit. The availability of surplus permits based on hunting zones is expected to be announced in August and going on sale sometime late September. So be on the lookout. Check your emails for more information from the Department of Fish and Wildlife. And like you said, it's a friendly reminder. If this is the first time you attempt to log into the new Mass Fish Hunt website, after they changed in May, you will be prompted to create a MyMassGov account. Yeah. And link it to your existing Mass Fish Hunt account. From there, you'll be able to log in through the Mass Fish Hunt page as you normally would, purchase licenses, report harvests, and so on. But please do that before hunting season starts, because the last thing you want to do is be trying to report that awesome harvest.
Yeah.
The big one. And trying to navigate all that nonsense of creating accounts and confirmation emails and
from your cell phone in the middle of the woods. It's kind of a pain in the ass. It is kind of a pain in the ass, and things have changed a little bit, like around the whole website and all that stuff. And you're logging in under the new system. It'd be a good idea, even if your stuff is already set. Like everybody I know buys their tags in January.
Yeah, when it opens up, you just do it and be done with it.
But it's still a good idea well before the season starts to go in there and just check stuff out. Gun Owners Action League is seeking plaintiffs for federal litigation. This is new this week, as a matter of fact. We are going back to court. Goal is going back to court this time to challenge two issues that affect just tons of gun owners here. The so-called assault-style firearms ban, and the ongoing repeated delays in processing LTC and FID applications. In order to have standing in federal court, a plaintiff who has been, injured by the law has to be the one to file a suit. So, Goal is looking for plaintiffs to fill those roles. First up, the assault-style firearms ban, according to Chapter 135. This one goes right straight to the heart of the ban in Chapter 135. Goal is looking for plaintiffs who desire to buy such firearms for defense, hunting, collectors, disabled vets, competitors, just about every category of gun owner who wants to buy one of these, super evil, scary rifles.
Yeah, there's a big set of bunny quotes around that.
You will need to have no legal prohibitions on buying firearms, and you must be willing to work with Goal and Goal's attorney team for messaging, and you have to be willing to appear in court as a plaintiff, right? That's kind of a ground rule. The other thing that Goal is chasing are delays. Massachusetts law is clear, and it's been clear for years, that the state has 40 days to process your LTC application and either get you your license or provide you with a reason for denial. A lot of towns who, don't necessarily like the Second Amendment in their civil rights, they procrastinate, they delay. Sometimes they leave months before a citizen can even get an appointment to apply. It's ridiculous, some of these towns. As we've said a million times, a right delayed is a right denied. This is a blatant violation of the law on the part of the licensing authority, but they avoid going to court by mooting the cases every time it comes up, right? So an applicant files a lawsuit to be able to exercise their rights. The licensing authority just issues the license, which kills the lawsuit. And then they just delay the next guy, and it's business as usual. It's a really slimy way of doing it. So what Goal is doing is taking this to the federal court level to hopefully deal with it once and for all. In order to be a plaintiff, in this case, you will need to be a first-time LTC or FID applicant, or know somebody who does, right? Point them towards Goal. You can't be legally prohibited from obtaining a license. And once again, you'll need to work with Goal and the attorney team, and you will need to be willing to appear in court. So these two are just a couple of the upcoming battles in the ongoing fight for our rights. For more detail on the cases and what they're looking for in a plaintiff, check out www.goal.org/Fed Challenge, all one word, Fed Challenge. If you're willing to take part, talk to Mike Harris at Goal, Public Policy Director. His email is mikeh@goal.org. It's Mike, all one word, at gold.org, or you can just contact the office and they'll put you in touch. So I'm from California. I left there a long time ago. I'm not kept up on their politics, but I have a pretty good idea about this guy in particular. Their current governor is quite a piece of work.
So last week, Gavin Newsome, governor of California, appeared on a podcast, the Sean Ryan Show.
Yep.
They released an episode, I believe it was on Friday. Early in the interview, Ryan presented Newsome with a gift, a California-compliant Sig Sauer P365 macro pistol. And it's not uncommon for a show. He's gifted pistols to other people. He has contacts with Sig Sauer, and so not out of the norm. In response, Newsome kind of forced a smile. You know, there's typical schmoozy.
That guy's such a slime ball. He really is a slime
and claimed
ball.
he's not anti-gun at all. He just supports common sense gun safety. And of course, that phrase in California has meant everything from blanket bans and magazine restrictions to outlawing new firearms, implementing near impossible permitting systems. In fact, people have been charged with a pay-to-play scheme for that. And of course, stripping 18 to 21-year-olds of their civil rights. And that's just factual track record.
Yeah. But he's not anti-2A, although he supports all of that stuff.
To bolster his credibility, Newsome said that he and his family went skeet shooting on Mother's Day. And he followed that up with this kind of odd statement. It's like, I'm not just good at it, I'm great at it.
Oh, God.
And then came the usual justification. So California's hostility towards the Second Amendment is simply a reflection of the state's cultural construct. This isn't Newsome. It's the state that wants it, and he's just doing the bidding of the people. But he says this is where people supposedly don't want... and this is what he said, everyone running around with a gun, making it hard to tell the good guys from the bad. So, impugning that characteristic onto all firearms.
Yeah, right. Everybody who carries a firearm is a bad guy.
But he made sure to emphasize that law enforcement is, of course, exempt from all of this. So long as government agents are armed and aiming outward, weapons of war are A-OK, business as usual.
God.
So maybe that's what California signed up for. You know, if you live there, you voted for a system where the state holds a monopoly on violence. Though, the irony is kind of hard to miss. These are the same people who scream about government oppression, yet demand that only the state remain armed while the public is disarmed and forced into compliance.
Massachusetts is just the same way.
But it's obvious Newsome is starting to lay the groundwork for a presidential run.
Oh, God,
and trying to rewrite his own personal history on the Second Amendment in real time. And we've all seen this movie before, right?
Yeah.
The anti-rights politician suddenly claims to be gun people the moment they need to seem moderate. Skeet shooting seems to be their thing of choice. It makes its usual appearance, sometimes with a dash of bird hunting. But Newsome even claimed to be a bow hunter, though there's no evidence I could find to support that.
I don't believe that for a minute.
Which that has become another one of those common things that people are coming out. Oh, I shoot bow hunt and this and that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sure you do. Yeah.
Even Mark Zuckerberg was doing an interview and he's, I'm an avid archery, bow hunting's amazing and blah, blah, blah. But when he was asked, well, what kind of bow do you shoot? He had no idea.
Yeah.
But if you're looking for, a concrete example, you can look at, Tim Walz in the previous election cycle. He branded himself a rugged bird hunting man's man. Yet when the cameras were rolling, he couldn't load or unload his own shotgun. So these staged performances aren't particularly convincing. Claiming to be pro Second Amendment because you shot a few clay pigeons is like the folks who spout a bunch of racist nonsense and then say, well, it's fine because I have a black friend.
Yeah, right.
It doesn't work that way. Like, you can't claim to be pro Second Amendment because you went skeet shooting once.
Yeah.
You don't get to claim credibility by dabbling in one narrow firearms discipline while pushing policy that guts the rest of it. And worse is, to me, they're so used to lying that they forget gun owners know the difference. Real hunters don't walk into the woods with ironed creases in their pants.
This guy, so Tim Walz is an example of it. Newsome is a big example of it. These guys try to be political Rorschach tests. They want to be like a reflection more of what you choose to see rather than what they actually are. Newsome is huge on that. He, like, every time you see him, he's slick. He says all the right things. He talks like a used car salesman, tells you exactly what you want to hear. I would not buy a car from the guy. Yeah. He's an abject slimeball. It's
the same thing of the people who say, well, I've only had 2 beers when they're asked they've been drinking. So for the people that are super anti-gun, they say, well, but I go skeet shooting. Yeah. As if that now negates every other thing that they're possibly saying. They're super pro Second Amendment because they sometimes...
Yeah, because I went skeet shooting one time and... Yeah.
Unfortunately, Ryan didn't press Newsome much on any of it, particularly in the Second Amendment issues. But the thing that's clear is Newsome is testing the waters. He's doing it with a whitewashed version of his record, hoping no one notices the contradiction between his words and his long history of anti-civil rights action.
I saw that thing, like the press gaggle that he was doing after the thing in the Democratic thing in South Carolina last week. He is I will put money down that he's going to run in 2028.
But moving further up the West Coast, I think the book 1984 is becoming a playbook for how those states are treating actual gun owners. So in Washington State, as of July 1st, they have rolled out sweeping new mandates targeting gun shops. Every store must now install 24-hour video surveillance and commercial-grade metal doors at each point of entry. But the most chilling requirement that they are now under is mandatory audio recording. Any shop with $1,000 or more in monthly sales is now forced to record any conversations that take place in their business near firearms displays and at point of sale.
Well, that's crap.
And the law doesn't stop there. Its language says it's including but not limited to, thereby giving the state broad authority to expand the surveillance zones. But in practice, that means any conversation that a customer has, an employee has, anybody has inside the store, on the property, or even within a certain distance could eventually be subject to mandatory recording. All of it must be preserved by the shop owner, just in case the government decides to use it later in a prosecution. So this isn't just asking store owners to secure their premises. They're being conscripted into this role of being state informants. They must post signs warning customers directly that both video and audio surveillance is active and that anything said or done on site may be captured and stored for up to 2 years.
Lovely.
The implication's clear. The government expects gun dealers to run their businesses like intelligence outposts. So we're told, and their explanation is that this is to crack down on straw purchases. But
because that's where people make those kinds of decisions. We're going to talk about straw purchases in the gun store.
But that assumes this bizarre fantasy world where otherwise lawful buyers are walking in and just announcing their intent to commit a crime. Excuse me, sir, I would like to commit a felony.
May I have a straw purchase, please? I will have 1 straw purchase.
and they're presuming that the dealers are just going along with it without unquestioningly going with it. But more likely, this is just another attempt to monitor and intimidate gun owners. Yeah. An effort rooted, it's less in public safety than in political control.
Nothing to do with public safety.
When the state starts forcing citizens to spy on each other under the threat of penalty, that's not public policy. That is authoritarianism. And no matter how they want to justify it, this is one of the most invasively dystopian measures ever forced, not just onto the firearms community, but any community.
Yeah.
I would challenge anyone from the anti-civil rights crowd to apply this logic equally and on equal footing to any other group of people.
They can't. Well, they won't because they can't. And you take this stuff at face value. Yes, it's authoritarianism. Yes, it's dystopianism. Yes, it's 1984 and all that stuff. We all know that at the root cause of all of it is the chilling effect on gun sales. They want to chill gun sales, right? Yeah. They want people to decide not to buy guns because they don't want to be recorded or because they don't want to be, subjected to this kind of thing. So in doing so, they make people turn off of guns, and that, meets the long-term goal of eliminating civilian gun ownership. It really boils down. It's like every time you see one of these new restrictions or one of these new, inventive ways of increasing restrictions, it always boils down to the same thing. It's always about the chilling effect.
Yeah, and they certainly they want to weed out having firearms as part of the common American vernacular.
Yeah.
So when you walk into that gun shop and you say, "Yeah, I'm looking to buy this firearm, that firearm, whatever it is," and the store owner says, "Well, what are you thinking for it? What kind of gun are you looking for? What's your need? What's your reason?" It might actually make sense in the state of Washington to plead the fifth. So what they're striving for is that you walk into the shop and you don't talk to anybody, you don't say anything, you don't do anything. You just walk in. "I want to buy this, please," and then they go, "Yes."
I give you money, you give me gun.
And what they want is to remove the community aspect. That you can talk about firearms and it's a normal thing.
And it's like, yeah, right. Talk about it as though it's not, a taboo thing.
It's awkward, uncomfortable, transactional, and they want to make the business as unfriendly as possible.
Yeah.
So you just don't go.
Yeah. And thereby chill gun sales. So this P320 thing is just ongoing. It's ongoing. We've watched back and forth with the lawsuits, and then, what was it, a month or two ago?
The P320 saga just will not
6 Hour did that big media bender where they're like, "Oh, we've been completely vindicated," and now
Well, there's an FBI report that has come out.
Yeah,
that their ballistics research folks. The ballistics research facility has done some evaluations. So the context here is, back in April of 2024, Michigan State Police began transitioning, a full transition from Glock pistols to the Sig Sauer M18, which is the military, put air quotes P320. Around that version of the P320. Each officer completed a 1,200 round training course, qualified on the new firearm. In July of last year, inside a department facility, a state police officer had his pistol holstered. It was secured in an Alien Gear Rapid Force Level 3 holster. Mm-hmm. So I pulled that from the report. And the firearm discharged without anybody touching it. Witnesses confirmed both the officer's hands were occupied. The firearm discharged. It was ultimately removed from the officer while still in the holster. And as it sat, they sent it directly to the FBI's ballistic research facility for evaluation.
Yeah.
So getting into the report, the FBI performed testing. So they did x-rays to confirm that there was no debris or foreign objects inside the firearm. But once disassembled, they found two concerns that stood out. First, that the primary and secondary sear surfaces showed noticeable wear, although they didn't define that as being uncommon given the amount of rounds that had been fired to the firearm.
Noticeable wear can mean a lot of things.
But second, that the striker safety lock spring was not properly seated.
Strikers are trying to take one apart in my mind.
The striker safety lock is the thing that physically blocks the striker from hitting a primer without the trigger being pulled.
Yeah.
So when you pull the trigger, it's under spring tension. When the trigger is pulled, it pushes that block out of the way and it allows the striker to move forward when released by the sear. It's worth noting that on the firearm in question, the trigger had been replaced due to what Michigan State Police is saying was an out-of-spec factory batch. The FBI research folks say that the new trigger was installed correctly, but did note that any component change can introduce tolerance stacking that may affect the pistol's internal performance. But to test possible causes, the ballistic research facility recreated several conditions. One of the claims that Sig Sauer had made was that depending on the holster, car keys could get jammed in there and activate a trigger. So using a car key inserted in the side of the holster, they were able to press against the trigger and cause it to discharge.
Okay. Through the open top of the holster.
Through the holster. Okay. So Sig Sauer has claimed this is a potential factor in prior incidents. However, in this particular case, the officer's keys were in his hand at the time that the firearm was discharged and away from the holster. So the test folks shifted their focus to the sear and safety mechanisms. They found that during live fire testing, the striker safety lock spring would shift around and sometimes land out of position. Now, that's a serious issue. The striker safety lock, like we said, physically blocks the firing pin from hitting the primer unless the trigger's pulled. It's the last mechanical safety, and what most people refer to as a, put the bunny quotes around it, a drop safety.
Drop safety. So the retention spring, the spring that is pushing that block into position so that it blocks the striker. The other end of that spring is supposed to sit in some kind of a recess or something within the gun frame, and they're saying that it's getting out of position.
It can be shifting around and sometimes end up out of position.
Yeah, that's not nothing.
So they turned their attention to the safety lock spring and sear surfaces. They found that under ideal lab conditions, the safety systems worked exactly as they should. If they released the striker from the primary sear, it would catch on the secondary sear, which is part of the internal safety features of that firearm. And then if they released it from the secondary sear, it was successfully blocked by the safety lock. But then they went into some stress testing.
That's ideal conditions.
Using a dead blow hammer, they tapped the firearm on various locations, and under that influence, the safeties held, but examiners noticed the striker began to shift around slightly on the sear surface. So they pushed it further, and they introduced some more real-world stresses that naturally come along with an outside the waistband duty-carried firearm. So they holstered the firearm and began applying pressure and torque, kind of simulating movement, pressing it against surfaces, twisting it. That real-world use, that, running and physical altercations, bracing against the wall.
Ducking behind
even
cover,
just
all that good stuff.
You go and sit in the car and the butt of the pistol is pushing against the seat behind you. After all of that, they would manually release the sear to see if the safety block would function. In 9 out of the 50 attempts, the striker struck the primer and fired a primer.
So the point was to manually release the sear without pulling the trigger, because pulling the trigger moves all of this other safety stuff out of the way.
Right. So they've essentially created a situation where they can release the striker, relying solely on the safety block to prevent discharge. In 9 out of their 50 attempts, the striker hit the primer with enough force to fire.
Okay.
So to verify whether this was just this particular firearm or function of design, the BRF tested a brand new unfired SIG M18. Same procedure, same outcome on their second attempt. It fired.
Okay.
So the takeaway, according to the ballistics research facility, it may be possible for the SIG Sauer M18 to discharge without the trigger being pulled if sear engagement is lost and the striker safety lock fails at the same time, which to me feels like a little bit of a obvious statement. It's like, well, if all the safety features fail, then it could fail.
Of course, yeah.
But they couldn't say with certainty that these failures caused this particular officer's firearm to discharge, but the possibility of a mechanical vulnerability merits more investigation to make an informed risk assessment for using the firearm in that context.
That's pretty boilerplate for a safety report.
So this report's dated all the way back to August 30th, 2024, and this is apparently coming out now following it being posted online last week as part of a public records request to the Michigan State Police. Since then, as of July 9th, Madison Sheehan, the Deputy Director of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, has issued a memorandum and is no longer approved for ICE agents and officers to carry all models of the P320. It directs their Office of Firearms and Tactical Programs to purchase replacement handguns for its agents and authorized officers as soon as possible.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, it's got supporters and detractors, and of course, SIG themselves recently came out with a thing saying, no, we're absolutely safe. We've been completely vindicated, and now this report comes out. It sounds to me like there's a design issue in the P320. If there is a safety issue, we should know about it.
Well, I'm not sure what to expect moving forward. SIG has been, pretty consistent and unwavering in their defense of the P320 platform. So I don't see any major revelations coming from their side. In this case, but I also don't think this report changed a lot of minds. Like you said, people were either already against it, already for it. So,
and the cases are ongoing.
So it is what it is. But I guess from a different perspective, however much it might be a tiny ripple in the ocean of P320s on the market, it does point to and speak volumes about how seriously the gun carrying community takes safety. So the P320, along with its, kind of military variants, the M17, the M18, it's a good firearm. If you've never shot one, I recommend giving it a try.
Yeah, it's a good platform.
The ergonomics are great. It's comfortable. It shoots when the trigger is pulled. So it's reliable.
It's reliable in that sense.
The modularity is great. It's a solid performing firearm from that perspective. But despite all that, there's been this one question that's been stuck to the P320, like this little shadow that follows it around. Yeah. And that's the issue of unintentional discharge. And in a market that demands perfection, even a handful of incidents is enough to get people to pause. So the numbers I can find is out of the roughly 2.5 million P320s, including all their variants and so on, the best numbers I've seen show about 100 reported unintentional discharges. It's a fraction of a percent, to the point of being almost statistically insignificant. But in the world of concealed carry and what the market demands, that margin for error is basically zero. People demand perfection from their...
One is too many.
From their things. So the implication in the overall that firearms owners are these dangerous people and they need to be surveilled and audio recorded. It's like there is nobody holding SIG's feet to the fire more than the concealed carry community, the private market. Obviously, the platform's successful enough that it won military contracts and it's doing well in pretty much all avenues.
Right. All that stuff has to get itself worked out. I mean, like I said a minute ago, the cases are ongoing, right? If there are issues, we should know about it. If those same issues might translate over to some of the other platforms, like the P365, for example, we ought to know about that too. I guess I'm curious to know whether these lawsuits are going to resolve themselves, and if they do, if they're going to resolve themselves without some kind of gag order or non-disclosure or something like that, so that people can actually see what was discovered in the process of all this.
Well, the report's now public, and certainly I think SIG has a claim to say that, at some point, if you monkey with a firearm enough, you can get it into a position where it will not function properly anymore.
Yeah.
So
up to and including unsafely. Yeah.
Of course. So that's been a common problem with people who tried to do trigger jobs on like Ruger 1022s.
Yeah.
And maybe polish the sear a little bit too far.
Too much. Yeah.
And then you need to buy a new trigger.
Yeah.
Or file some paperwork. But it was an interesting development. And, some people are saying that this report absolves the P320 because of the lengths they had to go to induce failures. Some people say that it is confirmation that the P320 was flawed. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, it's not over. This is just yet another piece of the puzzle, but it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. So the ongoing series on American battle rifles. This one is the Springfield Model 1795, America's first military musket. Last time we talked about the Charleville musket and Brown Bess, which were both imports.
Imports, and what kind of started off the whole, that was the original firearm that they had. It was available at the time.
Yeah.
The Springfield Model 1795 really began post-Revolutionary War. After the United States won its independence, it has this, fledgling republic, and it's facing a serious problem in arming its military. So, hey, we built a military. I guess we're going to keep it. And if we're going to keep it, it needs to be armed. So for years, militias relied on leftover European muskets. Like you said, the Charleville Model 1763 and the Brown Bess. And while foreign aid was and is appreciated, the young American government knew it needed its own reliable homegrown solution. So in 1794, President George Washington approved the establishment of a national armory in Springfield, Massachusetts. It wasn't a new site. The British had stored munitions there during the colonial period, but now, under American control, it would become the heart of U.S. military production. And with it came the first standardized musket ever produced for the United States.
The Springfield Model 1795 was born from necessity, and like many firsts, its form took inspiration from the proven designs that came before it. Modeled closely on the French Charleville, the 1795 featured a 69 caliber smoothbore barrel, a full-length walnut stock, and a flintlock firing mechanism. It stretched nearly 5 feet long and weighed close to 10 pounds loaded, making a serious tool for the battlefield, but it still traded volume of fire for individual accuracy.
So I found, kind of interestingly enough, sometimes the design for the 1795 gets attributed to Westboro, Mass native Eli Whitney.
Yep.
But Whitney's involvement with the 1795 had less to do with the functional design of the firearm, and it was more in line with really pushing and advancing the use of milling machines to make truly interchangeable parts. And while he never really succeeded in establishing his own footprint in the firearms market, he did play a pivotal role in bringing that level of manufacturing technology to the average gun maker.
Yeah, he was a manufacturing guy. He was not a gunsmith. He was not he was a machine maker. And he got contracts from the government to produce guns that he never produced.
He looked at how do you make a machine do the laborious task that people had to do?
Right. He was a very early forerunner of the whole interchangeability, the armory system of manufacture.
But Westboro guy.
Yeah, that guy. So back to the 1795. Accuracy was not its strength. Like all smoothbore muskets of the era, the 1795 was most effective when massed infantry fired in volleys at short range of less than 100 yards. It wasn't perfect, but for the early United States Army, it was a critical step towards military self-reliance. Production began around 1795, although early examples are often dated inconsistently. Unlike modern manufacturing, where standardization is a given, these early muskets varied from batch to batch. The first Springfield-made rifles were marked U.S. and carried the eagle head proof mark, a subtle yet powerful emblem of the new Republic's sovereignty. Harper's Ferry Armory in Virginia, on the other hand, opened in 1799, also produced its own version, contributing to the overall supply.
So the Model 1795, it saw extensive service. So it armed American troops from the late 1700s during the quasi-war with France, the War of 1812, and various frontier conflicts. It marched through dense forests, across muddy fields. It was carried by soldiers who had little in the way of formal training or in modern tactics. But during the War of 1812, it was often pitted against better-equipped British regulars, yet it still held its own just by sheer numbers and determined volleys. So by the 1810s, the U.S. military began phasing in newer designs like the Springfield Model 1816, which introduced more consistent parts and better durability. But the 1795 lingered on in militia hands and frontier outposts, and some were even converted to percussion cap systems during the 1830s and 40s, a sign of how durable that basic design had proven to be. Yeah. And not to mention, it was at a fairly affordable price. So if my info's correct, when you adjust for, inflation and so on, a Springfield 1795 in today's dollars would be, $600 to $1,000. So I mean, not throwaway money.
It's not nothing, but it's also well within reach of a growing army.
I thought it was kind of interesting in the comparison of when people talk about the AR platform.
Yeah,
that is roughly the price range that you can expect that ARs exist in. Obviously, there's outliers. Dirt cheap models that are going to be a little bit less expensive. They're obviously the very high-end ones.
The very edges of the bell curve, but that peak is right kind of in that price range.
Right around there. And the Brown Bess could cost about the same in its lifetime, although that started to, you could creep into maybe a couple $1,000s in today's money. But in the broader arc of American arms history, the Springfield 1795, it was more than just a musket. It marked the beginning of federal arms production. It's the birth of Springfield Armory as a national institution. It's the first real attempt at creating a standardized weapon for a unified force, for a unified U.S. military. So it may not have been elegant. It certainly wasn't precise, but it was a symbol of independence. It was a firearm made by Americans for Americans at a time when the country was still defining itself.
Yeah,
post-revolution,
still being born. Yeah, making an identity for itself.
Like we saw with the Brown Bess, that technology and that familiarity and availability on the market meant that a lot of people own these firearms. It was the common firearm that everybody had, could get parts for, could work on. So like we see now when people talk about, well, you know, the weapons of war, so to speak.
Yeah.
At the time when we talk about the text, history, and tradition of the Second Amendment, those firearms that were used not only in military service, but those firearms were used not only in military service, but in everyday use. Just because they exist as useful in one facet does not mean that that is the only facet in which it works.
That's right. That's right. It became like a general purpose arm. So that's going to do it for today. Thank you for listening in. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the show, share it with friends, check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/GoalPodcastMA, on YouTube at The Goal Podcast, or on Twitter at Goal Update.
To join Goal, visit goal.org and click the Join Renew button on the top of the homepage.
If you have a topic you think we should cover, if there's something going on in your club or your town, or if you have a question for the mailbag, shoot us an email at goalpodcast@goal.org.
The Goal Podcast is a production of Gun Owners Action League of Massachusetts. The views and opinions expressed are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of Goal, its staff, or affiliates.